Good afternoon. Now, Age UK, alongside Age UK, Cambridgeshire and Peterborough, are starting a new campaign to ensure everyone can use public services, even if they don't have access to the internet. Now, this is called Offline and Overlooked, and it's calling on the government to ensure that everyone has a choice to be able to access and use public services offline by phone, letter or face-to-face, as well as an online digital route. Melanie is from Age UK, Cams and Peterborough. I'm also going to be chatting in a sec to Richard from St Neots. Melanie, thank you for joining us. This is such an important campaign. Why do you guys want to lead on this?
Yeah, so at Cambridgeshire and Peterborough, and working with our national partners, Age UK, we feel really strongly that there is too much emphasis on the use of digital, and therefore a lot of statutory services are actually being put digitally, and therefore people aren't able to access them. So, for example, around 69% of people aged 65 and over actually don't have good enough IT skills to actually access services such as accessing a blue badge, for example. There's a lot of emphasis on us applying for blue badges online, and actually if you can't access online, how are you to get a blue badge, for example? So you then phone up for one, but actually trying to navigate that phone number is really, really tricky. So in the eastern region, in our area, there are around 260,000 older people who don't use the internet. That is a huge amount of older people. And for that reason, we feel very, very strongly that actually we need to make everything accessible for older people still. So let's not ditch the paper just yet. Let's make sure that people can still apply for things, can still access services that are absolutely vital for them. Because if they can't access those services, and it's the same for all of us, if you can't access the service, if you're unwell or your health is declining, it's likely to rapidly decline without the input of statutory services.
And also, a lot of things just sometimes don't work. And the reason I mention this, Melanie, is I'm going to chat to Richard from St Neots now. Welcome, Richard.
Hello, Lee.
Hello. So last summer, what happened to you happened to me last summer. I know yours is a long story and it's quite stressful, so I won't make you relive it all. But essentially, you had a day out with your wife. You couldn't, when you were parking the car at St Neots train station, you couldn't pay with cash. Your smartphone app didn't work, and this has happened to me a million times. You've tried to call the number for late payments. They take a payment but without the car registration number, so it's on your statement but they can't. Anyway, it's all just very chaotic. You get a fine, you challenge the fine, and it's been going on and on and on, all because you couldn't put money in the meter or speak to somebody at the train station. Is that pretty much correct?
Louise, that's pretty much correct. And of course, as time went by, just as Christmas was coming up, my wife had masses of stuff to do with family. We've got 8 grandchildren, so they were all visiting us. And out of the blue comes a debt collector wanting £170.
Knocking on your door?
Well, not actually knocking on the door, but a letter, very threatening letter. It really upset my wife, as you can imagine. The trouble is, it was her car. She's the keeper of the car, so she gets the letter. And this was when we had already paid the parking fine the parking charge. They let us pay the charge. We did this online, and having done it online, we got a debt collector's letter for £170. And by this time, my wife was really upset, and she said, "Look, for heaven's sake, Richard, let's just pay this. We can afford it if we're pushed. And quite frankly, I'd rather pay £150 than have all this hassle." And it turned out that the £170 was due to a missing penny that wasn't actually missing.
Oh, that is infuriating, isn't it, Richard?
It's just incredible. And I think that, the point that Melanie was making, we are losing all the face-to-face contact that keeps us all human and alive.
Yeah, I know.
And it's a terrible, terrible thing, particularly for older people. In my view, there has to be always somebody on hand, either on the phone that is accessible. I mean, there's no good getting on the phone and having to be charged past from pillar to post for buttoning in numbers and all the rest of it, you never get to speak to anyone, and then they play you terrible music.
Terrible music.
And you hang there, and in the meantime, it really does stress you, and it stresses old people even more. And it's a terrible, terrible world, I think.
Oh, Richard, well, firstly, I'm so sorry that you and your wife have gone through this, especially at Christmas, and I totally understand how you got to the point where you said, let's just pay it for our mental ease. And like you said, you noted that you, if pushed, could afford it, and so many people couldn't. Melanie, are these stories typical of what you hear at Age UK?
They're very typical, and we are incredibly grateful to Richard for A, sharing his story, and B, coming on here today, because he is the real voice of what's actually happening out there. And, we need to hear these kind of stories, because these are the evidence that we need to be pushing up to central government to say, come on, you need to understand that even if somebody back in the day was really good at IT, it doesn't mean that they still are now, or that they wish to use it. And, their skills may have lessened, and they may have sensory impairments. They may not be able to see a screen on a smartphone or an iPad or a laptop, and so on. And it just makes things very inaccessible for people. And we're seeing the same with banks. We're losing all of the high street banks. We're losing post offices. People can't even get cash out anymore. And a lot of people don't trust the internet. And I kind of understand why. We get lots of, personally and in a working environment, we get lots of emails coming through that are really quite harmful. And I understand why people don't trust things. And so we are urging the government to really look at rolling out these shared banking hubs that people are starting to talk about.
Do you know what?
Can I come in here, Louise?
Oh, of course you can, Richard.
Well, this question of not being able to trust it. I mean, my case, I think, is a one in point, because I paid online the £4.10 parking charge. That appeared on my bank statement, on my card statement. It was quite clearly paid. And then this debt collection notice or letter comes through for £170. And it was difficult. You know how these debt companies work. They don't take no for an answer. And we gave them all sorts of reasons why this is all paid, but they took absolutely no notice. The human factor had disappeared out of the window. And when I complained, through a formal complaint to the parking company, which I managed to do online, I found out where to do it, and that wasn't easy, they came back with this incredibly lame excuse. They said that the debt recovery referral had been generated by a missing penny.
Yeah.
It had recorded £4 at the computer, they say, had recorded £4.09 instead of £4.10. And that's what triggered the notice. So there was nobody in that chain to look at the thing and say, look, I had already told them our elderly circumstances ages ago. They take absolutely no notice of it.
Richard, I think if anyone can take these people on, it's you. Tell us, Melanie, how can we help? Because I can literally feel people shaking their fists on Richard's behalf at the radio right now, going, well said, well said. So how can we help you?
Well, I think Richard has proven a point just by what he said today, that him and his wife were able to speak to each other about this. But how many people are on their own finding themselves in similar situations, not necessarily in a car park, but for other reasons, owing money or being told that they owe money and they absolutely don't, or not accessing services. So I think it's key to say you're not alone. You're absolutely not alone. If you're facing similar issues, regardless of whether it's trying to access a service or being wrongly charged for services, then please do get in touch with us and we will help you to the best of our ability. And if we can't, we will find the correct organisation to help you. It would be very easy to say here, as I did make a mistake earlier, you can look at our website, but actually that's the whole point I'm on here to say, you know what, we're accessible by phone. So please do call us, and our number is 0300 666 9860. And if you want to call us purely because you want to tell us that this has happened to you and you've actually sorted the situation out, we really want to know about it as well, because we need this evidence to feed up to central government, to our colleagues in London.
Melanie Pittock from AGK Counts in Peterborough, and Richard from Sydney. You're a hero and I love you. Thank you very much for your time this afternoon. The news